figured out. So no, really appreciate it. And I feel bad. I mean, I'm coming in and saying hi to everybody, and then I'm rushing off to the next thing. I think maybe that's the life of a president, or at least the life of a president the first couple of weeks, on the job. But just wanted to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to meet all of you. Early on, it's going to be a lot about listening and hearing from what all you think the new president needs to do and should do. And so I think there's a little share your ideas link on my website. Would love to get that kind of feedback. But beyond that, just kudos to all of you for holding this and hosting this conference on a really important topic. And so I was kind of looking at the schedule of events, just supporting student mental health and improving student learning and building an inclusive, classroom and all the rest. These are really important issues for all of us. And it's a really important topic for me. Long before I ever showed up at NDSU, I have kids in college. They have friends that I know well. Back at the old job, they would stop by my office and check in, but obviously just teaching and, in the role that I've had professionally too, that, sadly, this is a space where we need a lot of help, and it's really important. And it just seems like no matter what we do, how much resources we can, we could just keep pumping more and more and more into this space. And so I think we've got to figure out how to get smarter, make it a priority, think strategically how we can help students, but of course, faculty and staff too. So I'm delighted that you're making this a priority at this conference. I just think it's an incredibly important space to be in. And I want to applaud President Brashani. He has this Council on Wellness. He has a couple of these councils. I'm meeting with some people from, I don't know what just happened behind me, but I saw. See all the cameras, they're all like. I really want to applaud him for having a couple of different councils. He has a Council on Wellness. My understanding is that may have had a kind of different focus when it started around maybe alcohol and drug abuse, which of course are really important, but it's maybe evolved more into this space. So I'm meeting with some representatives pretty soon from that committee. I want to hear from them if that's the right way to go. Do we need to, breathe life into them? So I need some help from all of you. You're all here because you think and believe and know this is an important space too. So how can we collectively, do our best? And how can the new president, think about how we make this a priority with limited resources in the tough times that are ahead, to see what we can do to really just make it a more inclusive and safe space for everybody. So again, I applaud you for being here, after the semester is over. You're here because this is important to you. I want you to know it's important to me as well. So let's, consider this the start of a conversation and a dialogue about this. And please reach out. Please let me know, what I can do to help. I'm getting a lot of advice right now from everybody. I can use a little more. And besides all that, if you just see me around, please say hi. I got to tell you that the best part, I will say this over and over again until it's absolutely boring to everybody. But when my wife and I came, we got back on the plane and we were like, what just happened? This is a really cool place. Like, people are really special and great here. And she is actually coming tonight and we'll be here for a couple of days and heading back home. But so I've kind of been solo running around town, and the people who cross the room, whether they know you're new, they may not know you're president, but they just want to welcome you and make you feel good about it. And you all know that. It just kind of makes me chuckle every time because it just keeps happening. And so that's a pretty cool place to be. So I'm looking forward to more of that. Looking forward to meeting all of you. Again, thank you for your hard work, just wrapping up a semester, and your commitment to this topic, because I think we all agree it's really important. So with that, I'm going to rudely sort of exit. But I can't wait to, I know I see some familiar faces, but certainly not everybody. So looking forward to meeting everybody, and have a great conference. Thank you.
Other than Dr. Cook, so I have to back up. Next up, we're going to hear from Dr. Bilen-Green. She's the Vice Provost for Faculty Affairs and Equity, and she's just going to talk to us a little bit around our conference theme, that it was appropriate with the role and all the good work she's done in our campus around inclusive practices. And then we'll do just a little bit of housekeeping before we send you on your way for the first session.
Okay, well, good morning. Good morning. I am thrilled to be here at a conference that actually has inclusive teaching practices as the conference theme. And I have a few thoughts to share with you about inclusive teaching practices, but I want to first welcome you all to this conference. I hear that there are about 50 people who registered for the conference in person and about 75 via Zoom. Thinking that this is after a very long, what seemed like a never-ending academic year, that you're here, that shows true commitment to teaching, doing good teaching. So thank you for being here. I also want to thank our presenters. There is a good number of presenters that are willing to share their experiences, their lessons learned, and their expertise with us all. I also want to make sure that we recognize Office of Teaching and Learning and the Learning and Applied Innovation Center that are hosting, that have put together this conference for us all, so that we learn from each other. We'll learn how we can reach all of our students, not the ones that are more motivated, more prepared, but all of our students, and then help them engage in lifelong learning. So a few thoughts on inclusive teaching. Some of you know me, some of you know me very well. I come from engineering, and I have worked on a number of policies, procedures that focus on compliance. In a previous life, I've worked on designing policies, processes, products even. And so I can give you a number of reasons why inclusive teaching is important, and it's the right thing to do, and why it is critical for the success of our students, as well as the success of our instructors, for making sure that they do a good job. So I can give you from our promotion and tenure criteria, our policy 352, and our guidelines. I'm just going to read a sentence from you, which talks about the criteria for good teaching: the effective delivery of instruction to and the stimulation of learning by students, as well as the continuous improvement of courses. Another reason I can give you is from our more recent student plan that actually has a goal, a specific goal on student success and achievement. And that goal states, provide inclusive and collaborative opportunities to prepare students to be successful in a diverse and globally connected world. And it also adds, foster a supportive environment focused on all students' well-being. That's from our student plan. And there are other parts to this. I just chose a few. For our Higher Learning Commission accreditation criteria, one of the criteria states the institution overall fosters a climate of respect among all students, faculty, staff, and administrators from a range of diverse backgrounds and ideas and perspectives. So for some of you, this might resonate, but for me, really, when I think about it, what resonates for me is inclusive teaching is critical for the same reason why good teaching was important 25 years ago, about 25 years ago, when I started teaching at NDSU right after graduate school. And to me, at the time, it was important to do a good job. You're on probationary period. I mean, you go into teaching, you have ideals, aspirations. You want to reach all your students, not only the ones that are continuously coming and asking questions, who are sitting up front, who are engaging with you, but all of our students. At the time, that inclusive or good teaching meant, very simply put, and this is my naivete at the time, or maybe even the people around me, that really meant checking prerequisites to make sure that the students met the prerequisites and that those were completed at NDSU or at institutions that are reputable, comparably reputable to NDSU. Or that if they have the prerequisites, that also meant that those prerequisites were appropriate. So if the whole class is failing, that might be because they don't have enough of a preparation. But so that is a very simple approach. At the time, that was 25 years ago, I did not hear about inclusive teaching. That doesn't mean it didn't exist in other places. I come from engineering, so that is my my perspective, and I didn't really have anybody talking to me about inclusive teaching. One thing that I learned very quickly teaching in engineering is that we had very few female students, women students, and they internalized any failing grade. And what they considered as a failing grade was very different than my male students. And so I may have helped them be successful in the class, but getting a B or a C meant that they actually chose different career paths. Whereas my male students, they would point fingers that it's an instructor's failure, had nothing to do with them, and they would say they might be a C average student, but they were determined, they were qualified, they had what it took to be an engineer. Again, in the interest of creating diversity, supporting diversity at the time, I assigned my students into groups that are, so you have very few female women students. What do? You assign one to each. So ensure diversity of students, but what did that do? This is again 25 years ago. So, but that meant that my women students did not have other women students to work with. They could not see themselves and other classmates, at least in the project. That also meant that they could not work on projects that were of interest to them. But that was, again, 25 years ago. Since then, we have learned a lot. And so to me, inclusive teaching is good teaching. It's a mindset of making a commitment to help all of our students to learn, to succeed, and engage in lifelong learning. We're not going to be able to cover everything we want them to learn in a class, but if we can engage them, then and then they will engage in our disciplines, the disciplines that we want them to pursue, and the careers that we want them to. So if I were to highlight two things about effective teaching, and there are many, but the ones that really that I like to choose is self-awareness and building relationships. Some come easily to others, and some it doesn't come to as easily. But a good teacher reflects on their teaching and is sensitive to feedback. And that feedback is not, it's actually all forms of feedback from your students, from your colleagues, from your mentors, and from reviewers. And I also find self-awareness helpful in adjusting quickly to the characteristics of individual students and student groups. Not making assumption that you know anything and everything about all the students in your class, and be open to learning about them, about what might work for them and what might not work for them. I think a good teacher also recognizes that the student-teacher as well as student-to-student relationships are educational tools. And when we focus too much on the content and not enough on what is happening with what we are doing to our students in our interactions with them, and then the interactions that they are having with their classmates, what does that do to their learning? Does that help them to feel having belonging? Does that make them feel safe, open to learning or not?